Hey folks, today I'm meeting with Expert Dojo CEO, Brian Mac Mahon. This is as part of our Plans Fireside Check. Brian, as we all know, he is a very resourceful person, has traveled around the world, lived in over 35 countries, launched hundreds of businesses, and now is heading the Expert Dojo. That itself is an umbrella for hundreds of other entities. So very interesting conversation. Tune in, please. Brian, finally good to sit down with you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Well, you know I'm resourceful because we're actually inside a fridge. This is a podcast studio that we created inside an actual industrial fridge.
That's resourceful right there. All right, let's start with Brian's journey. So you were part of a team that built a global giant in the real estate space. This is before WeWork, before all that happened years ago. So let us walk through that journey and how you came from there and came into the startup world. So
I had multiple journeys. I'll go a little bit further back just to add some context. So I was born in Ireland, and like many other folks in Ireland, going back 30 years or 35 years or so ago, Ireland was like tough.
Right.
And so everybody left. Right. That's just what would happen.
Right.
And we all go to England or we go to America.
Right.
Like that's the Irish journey.
Right.
And so I went to England at the start, and then I had the great fortune of being able to get involved with real estate. And I bought and sold like a bunch of really great properties. I focused in a place called Richmond in Surrey, Richmond, Twickenham, and anyone who knows the places, great places. Right. And so then while I was doing that, I got involved with Regis.
Right.
And Mark Dixon had just started Regis at the time. And so it was a brand new company. And the idea behind Regis, what I loved was, let me tell you my favorite thing in the world when we invest in a startup is someone who's taking a lovable product and has this audacious, impossible goal to build what I think of as a Horizon 3 product. And Horizon 3 product is creating a category which doesn't exist yet. And Mark Dixon and Regis was doing that. It had never been done before. You had executive suites over here, but you never had a person who said, I'm going to build tens of thousands of locations that you can drop into and use as easily as dropping into a Starbucks. And that was like an amazing thing. So I loved that goal. And
now we take it for granted, but at the time, it's like, it's like the Facebook like button, right?
Yes.
Now we take it for granted, but to come up with that idea at the very beginning, it's pretty big. Right?
So I saw it revolutionizing real estate. And the really interesting thing with real estate is that everybody was so old-fashioned and backward that for them it was ridiculous that these executive suites could think that they would take over space. But now look, fast forward 30 years, look at commercial space. Commercial space has been decimated. And all of these all of these commercial agents and all of the people that were in the space are surprised. They're left with long leases. They can't afford to pay. They have challenges. But Mark Dixon saw this 30 years beforehand. He saw that you would use space the same way that you would use a stapler. Not even people, a stapler. It becomes that disposable. So I really like that. And
so to come to think about it, like that is the shared, not only workspace, but shared everything. Like, Uber is a brainchild of the same thing.
So, exactly the same. Exactly the same thing. The interesting thing, though, with Mark Dixon was he was not that great at raising money. And so because he wasn't that great at raising money, his valuation never went to what WeWorks went to, which at the time was a huge problem. Now, it's not a problem. WeWork died. He survived and did really well, but it was a problem. Anyway, so I followed Mark around Europe. I followed Mark around the United States. We opened up Mexico. We opened up China. We opened up Russia. We opened up a ton of places. I had a phenomenal experience. And then I wanted to build out my own tech company, which I built out with my partner. My partner then ended up taking over the company, which was fantastic. And then I was in New York, and I thought, life has been good. I've had these great experiences. I had a couple of other small companies as well. And I thought I was just going to take it easy. And so I came down to Santa Monica and I noticed something that I hadn't seen before for some reason. And don't ask me why I didn't notice it, but I had not seen it. And that was the unfairness of startup. I just noticed it. I suddenly noticed all of these startups with all these great ideas, and then they all disappear. And you never see them again. It was like children of the corn. with startups, right? And so I thought, wow, I wonder, is there something that we can create to try and do that? So I think that whole first part of my life put me in a place to do something that I never really wanted to do. I'm an accidental investor. I never wanted to be an investor. I never planned to be an investor. It was never really on the cards before. But because of what I saw in that moment, I noticed something so fundamentally broken that I wanted to be a part of it.
Right. So this is what you spoke of in your TED Talks about 7 years ago. So like how the American dream is being kidnapped at the time, right? So 90% of the startups were failing, and even the ones that were going beyond that success barrier, they were the CEOs were being pushed out for someone that is being put in by the institutional investors. So how do you see that from like what you saw then versus now? Like, have we changed the space? All these new financing methods, alternative financing, and also coaching methods, has that made an impact, or is it still the same?
So I would say my perspective of right or wrong has shifted. But my perspective of the problem has not shifted. If anything, it's worse than I thought before. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if anybody saw that TEDx talk, I spoke about venture capitalists causing the problems, whether it be sexism, racism, too much money, all kinds of problems. And I now don't believe there's really good and bad people, not to extremes. Like there are, but that's not the problem. Like it's more of a narrative which takes away from fixing the real problem. I think money is the challenge. And if we go back to venture capital 20 years ago, it was very straightforward. There was $3 million for a Series A round. Like a big Series A.
Yeah,
that's $3 to $5 million, right? Really successful, right? And that's okay, because if you have a founder who gets $3 or $4 million and you get another founder with no money, the founder with no money can beat the founder with $3 or $4 million if the founder with no money is really, really, really good. And that should be the standard. Today, a really great Series A, or at least 2 years ago, a great Series A was $100 million, $200 million. I'm sorry, nobody can beat somebody with $200 million because they don't need to run a successful business. They don't need to run a profitable business. They don't need to hire properly. They don't need to pay a normal price for ads. Like you will get decimated. I don't care how good you are as an entrepreneur. It's almost impossible to be there. And so the problem is just the amount of money in the market. Now, have some venture capitalists manufactured it because there's so much money out there that they have a lower chance of losing? Of course. But it's not their fault, I don't believe. I think it's the fault of the money that's actually there. And they've allowed themselves, in some ways, to be kidnapped by the fear that if they don't put so much money in, that they're going to lose out. And so, but the problem is still the same as before. You know what's, but there's a slight change. So as I looked at it, I thought, well, how can we impact that problem? Well, we're very good at growth. I know everybody who's good at growth. I can build an organization that's going to be better and better and better at growth. And then we can build a program that will help people with growth. So those folks who are building amazing products that are actually wowing their customers, we can help them by building really good growth. So that in venture capital could only focus this hardcore focus on growth. But I will tell you, something happened like during that period that actually changed my perspective, but it gave me hope on like the great entrepreneurs. And a lot of that is what I've seen happening in India. And I've seen the entrepreneurs breaking through, and I've seen our founders be able to break through unbelievably strongly just based on where they come from, what their abilities are. And literally today we had the Consul General of India here at the dojo. We had a bunch of folks from Thai here at the dojo. We had a bunch of folks who are like Indian professionals. And if you look at the changing face of incredible founders who are breaking through, who are owning the startup space, it's not Israeli anymore. It's Indian. And so it's not about saying it's unfair, it's unfair, it's unfair.
Right.
It's about these amazing entrepreneurs who have a superior technology ability,
right.
being able to break through and do really well. So that's been really exciting for me.
Yeah.
And I've really leaned into it to the extent that we're opening an office in
right.
India later this year.
Right.
And blockchain has also been very exciting, which
yeah.
I'm really happy to talk
amazing.
about.
Yeah. So I'm going to get back to the international markets in a bit. Let's cover something interesting. So back in the day, like let's say in 1950s, if my father was starting a business or even grandfather, like they needed to have a lot of capital even to start a brick and mortar business, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then came the technology disruption. So all of a sudden you can rent, just like you rented office space, now you can rent the server space, you can rent the equipment, you can rent anything, and you can set up and going in a matter of like 2 weeks. You have a business, from e-commerce to technology products to anything in the technology space, right? So your investments pretty much went from needing say 100 million to maybe 20,000, right? So that must have opened up a lot of startup ideas, like the acceleration of ideas must have happened there. But we are saying like, okay, that happened, but now it kind of completed the cycle back into the square one, so that the flood of money into certain chosen entities still put those the other rest of the 99% in a back seat. Is that what I'm hearing here? Like, I mean, what's the comparison here? Like, how did technology change for the better, but then again went back into where it was prior to technology advancements?
It's a different problem,
mm-hmm.
right? So the problem 30 years ago was just that, to your point,
mm-hmm.
technology was really expensive. It was very hard.
Right.
And for a founder to be able to break through, they needed to be really strong with technology.
Right.
Today, growth is really hard.
Right.
So technology, you're right, is a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Most pieces of technology can be built by technology teams in a lot of places. Now, incredibly strong machine learning,
right.
AI, and
right.
They obviously are a different level, but
right.
98% of technology are not that.
Right.
98% of how do I do this better so
mm-hmm.
the consumer gets more.
Right.
But now it's the growth problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like 10 years ago, Facebook was easy peasy.
Mm-hmm.
You could reach anyone at a low price. You
mm-hmm.
want to launch your skincare, no problem.
Right.
You're going to make money on a skincare,
mm-hmm.
right? You want to launch an e-course, no problem. People will look at it. Now there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people selling an e-course.
Right.
And Facebook are ranching up the price, pushing up the price,
mm-hmm.
pushing up the price. It's like pulling an elastic band,
right.
in the knowledge that it's only going to break in little pieces.
Right.
And those little pieces are individual companies who are continually losing money, and
mm-hmm.
they're spinning out of the cycle.
Right.
But then more companies are coming in, selling their courses.
Right.
And then the key becomes, how do I navigate this incredibly difficult system,
mm-hmm.
which is growth, to be able to break through
mm-hmm.
without having a ton of money.
Right.
So it's just different.
Right.
That's all. But the same challenge
mm-hmm.
is that you want to be successful.
Right.
Successful equals
right.
200% growth every single year
right.
for a period of 5 to 7 years.
mm-hmm.
That's what a en route to unicorn looks like.
mm-hmm.
To be able to do that, you have to nail the growth.
Right. Interesting. So to a point, like someone growing a small business on Amazon, for example, Amazon is a collection of small businesses. Now I'm talking about the actual Amazon buying platform. So they have essentially become employees for the Amazon platform because they are selling things, but most of the profit goes to the technology platform. So it's very hard to go. But I understand you're talking about actual unicorns starting an idea and then taking it to the next level with that growth money. So interesting. So,
and by the way, to that point,
yeah.
even Amazon
mm-hmm.
are no saints.
Right.
Like we know that they have algorithms which are built in to look
mm-hmm.
for the best-selling
yeah.
products,
mm-hmm.
and they're like,
yeah.
okay,
yeah.
I just discovered what I'm going to sell
right.
next, and it looks the same, right? And then they squeeze people out, and so that they own the market. It's a qualification for theft. On many levels. And even trying to sell on Amazon these days, you don't get access to the customer. Mm-hmm. You don't get access to any of the data. You just get a permission to be on their toll road. And that permission is not a cheap permission.
That's what I meant by becoming an employees of the tech platform. Yeah. So, and then the funny part is the employer has no responsibility towards the employee. So, like they don't even have to fire them. They have no legal liability.
That's great,
right? So that's great. So it's funny how things have become within about 30 to 40 years.
Right? Freedom has many different forms.
Right. Exactly. Right. So, all right. Going back to international markets. So obviously, Expert Dojo has 3 different programs: the pre-accelerator program, the accelerator program, then the international accelerator program, right? So you're touching the surface on that international accelerator program where like you go to like Dubai and India and Thailand and all these places. So if you can elaborate on that, like how that program works, like how we are finding these amazing founders through these programs, and then in doing so, how this will create long-term economic growth in these places that are not slated for economic success in a traditional sense.
Yeah. So if I can give one piece of advice and help, that would be for entrepreneurs to take away from this, that would be useful for you. It's that our entire thesis is that you start with a lovable product, simple, complete, and transformative. The simple means it can just be one feature. It doesn't have to be lots of features. It can just be one feature. Complete means it's got to be 100% the best. This is not a minimum viable product. That's an awful thing. This is a lovable product. And transformative means that the person who receives it has got to be in a place that was unimaginable before, no less, right? And then our job, all of us, me as a venture capitalist or as an accelerator program, yours in what you're doing and building up one of the most important groups of finance people in the world to be able to protect startups everywhere, or a startup that's building a tech company. Our job is to become so proficient at that we can reach to Horizon 3 products. Now, what does proficient mean? It means that we start off by building domain awareness. Domain awareness means we speak at conferences, we speak on events, we do podcasts like this, we go into other things, and people get to know us, right? Do we have something to say? Normally, no, right? Because it's at the beginning, but we say it very eloquently, right? Then we have to get to a place of domain ownership, right? Domain eminence. That is where you have such a solid knowledge of your product, of your area, of the space, of the industry, that you speak and people listen because you have something to say, right? And then you get to domain dominance. Our goal for every founder of every company is to get to domain dominance, is to be the Steve Jobs who owns the market and everybody else is pissed off and annoyed at him because he won, right? And then so what's beautiful about lovable product to Horizon 3 product is the domain awareness to domain authority to domain dominance. It flows through it really beautifully. And you have to push that domain awareness to domain dominance to domain thing. But as you're pushing it, you learn more and more and more and more and more so that you realize what your Horizon 3 looks like. And so when I started Expert Dojo, I didn't have like a pre-accelerator, or if I did, I was copying from somebody else. Like I just knew that the system was broken for ordinary people with extraordinary ideas, right? I went to a nice school, but it doesn't mean that I don't recognize that if the only people who are getting unicorns for their birthdays are people who went to nice schools, like that's not fair. Right? It's not fair. Of course, there should be a large percentage of them because their moms and dads worked harder, whatever their moms and dads worked, they should get a little bit of unfairness, but not this much. And so that was my only thesis. My only thesis was there is tremendous bias in the world. I want to be a part of helping overcome that bias. And I want to focus on what does the math equation look like to build a growth formula that overcomes bias. I found it like so interesting. But I had no idea how to do it. Like I knew how to do growth. I'm very strong at emotional resonance or brand. But like that whole formula, like I didn't know how to do it. So I took the dojo, I surrounded myself by a lot of people, and then I started building up domain awareness. I knew my lovable product was show love and respect and care and growth to startups, and then they won't hate us, right? And then you move from don't hate to love for that one feature that we have. but we promise there's lots more features coming when we get to Horizon 3. And then we build up domain awareness and built a domain authority. And over the years, over the 3, 4, 5 years that I and my team have been doing this at Expert Dojo, we've come across some of the most brilliant growth hackers in the world. Right? And some work with us, some don't work with us, some we watched, some we saw doing it, and most we got engaged with our founders. And so we've now pattern matched 288 companies that we have invested in. Like, that is a huge privilege. And it means that we can get to a stage where we're like, okay, now we get it. Now we know that if we don't go to India, we're dumbasses because there's too many good founders coming out of IIT and just great places in India. There's too many great companies coming out of there. If we look here, there's so many great Indians who are now moving from second engineer to first engineer to CTO to CEO. It's happened. And it's happened already. The English no longer own this piece of land. Now this piece of land owns the English, actually, if we look. I mean, he's an Indian prime minister in England, right? And so it's a really beautiful time. And then I went to Dubai, and everybody in the airport is Indian in Dubai as well. I'm like, okay, the universe is explaining to me, Brian, you're a dumbass if you don't do that. And then so I'm like, great. Then blockchain, which I've been following for years, but I believe decentralization has now reached a point where it is highly significant as a paradigm change, more than AI, more than anything. And so we've leaned very heavily into buying tokens and having positions on tokens that we can now move forward on that as well. But that wasn't a strategy before. That was moving through this domain to one, to the other, to the next, to get to Horizon 3. And we didn't even have an international accelerator. I just saw an African company and I'm like, are you kidding me? This African company is great. She's an amazing founder. She's great at fintech. Like, I don't know why these other people don't see this, but I see it. And so suddenly we're invested in 50, 60 companies in Africa, 50, 60 companies in India, and then we are where we are.
Basically, in the next 5 to 10 years, global boundaries will become just virtual, and like those are just on the map, but really, everyone will be working together. So it's a great push for the next level of innovation because these founders will have better opportunities with people like you doing what you're doing, giving opportunities and getting them into the world stage. So more and more people, when they start doing that, obviously it'll open up, opportunities. So how does when you go to these countries, like, of course, you have to face these cultural barriers and then these politics and whatnot. So, like, how do you counter that, and how do you standardize the process? Because the background of each country is very different, and how they receive and perceive you coming from from California to establish these funds and to promote. What are the challenges? Like, what are the top challenges that you face, and how do you encounter those? How do you counter those?
So I actually, with the exception of China, which I had very big cultural challenges with because it was so alien for me, and it was just so alien for me. I never quite worked out what people were thinking, so I tried once and that was it. But with the exception of China, I've never had a cultural barrier. Like, I haven't. Like, I was in a room today. I go to almost every Thai conference. Thai conference is like the largest Indian angel group, I believe, in the world, right? And so I go to pretty much every Thai conference, and I can't think of a single one where I'm not saying something on stage. Even if I'm not invited, I'm still pretty much saying something on stage. And so with Indians in general, I feel amazingly comfortable. Like, even in the room today.
Not personally. I'm thinking more in terms of like
it's the same.
So the business to business and government perception of global presence coming into these countries, like not only India, like any country. Like so that challenge. That's what
okay. So Indian government are tough. Indian government Indian government are tough to people who are outside India. They make it hard. They're like, we don't like you until you're in India. And I think that's okay.
Especially in the last 10 years with Modi.
It is tough. And so that's why we're going to India. Because it's a big place. Like, why wouldn't we go to India? We'll invest in startups. We'll get engaged there. I love the people there. I love the founders there. I love the work ethic there. I love how smart people are there. Of course, we're going to open up. And you know what? They're right. They're like, why would you take our company and then bring it outside and then do it? Like, that's stupid. So I'm actually fine with that right now. And other than India, and even including India, look, if I take the generality of the entrepreneurs, everybody is the same everywhere. There's a customer. That customer has a need. We are either satisfying that need or we are not satisfying that need. If the need is being satisfied, then the customer will buy more. If the customer buys more, they'll tell more people if we make it easier for them to tell more people, and then more people will buy. If we build a good system and a repeatable model, then we'll be able to maintain that and be able to grow even further. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, I found zero differences in Africa, whether it's Nigeria, leaving aside local political or logistical or challenge, but like the day-to-day of, I have a product, I need to build a website, I need to make sure that I sell stuff, I need to make sure, like, it's the same. And so as an investor, my entire diligence is to understand the customer. Is I want to know what the customer is feeling. And I can see that without asking the customer, because you see it in their behaviors.
That's our process too at CFO Plans. Like, we our biggest marketing effort is doing a good job, because we know people are going to talk to each other. So our next set of customers comes through that word of mouth. So going back to these investments. So out of all the hundreds of companies that you have created under Expert Dojo, like any fund, any companies that you are fond of personally, like any products that you thought, oh my God, this is why I'm in business. This makes me so happy. Like, anything that comes to your mind without being unfair to all the other 199 like success stories.
So many. If I just think of like recent ones, we had one of our companies who are called Mugafi now, who used to be called Unlu. I think it was our first Indian investment that came through. And we, I don't want to do an India love fest here, but like, they were in last week and he was here. And even
obviously he's very fond of India now. This like he said India now probably 500 times.
I have, but only because I was here this morning. And Smitha over at Thai, she said to me, look, you know what, we're going to change your name because Brian Mac Mahon doesn't work. She said, we're going to call you Brig Mahon. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I can do it a new name. I'm living it. So how can I go back now? Nobody else has given me a new name. So I'll give you a few different companies, a few different things. So we have, I would say, of the 280 odd companies that we have like 60 doozies, 60 that I feel like amazing about right now. And just the way venture works, there'll be an extra 20 or 30 that I don't think were good, and there'll be 20 or 30 in the 60 that I thought was amazing, and they won't be amazing, right? That's just the way it works. It's like, it's a long journey to get from pre-seed, seed, A, B, C, etc., right? So I think we've got like 60 in there. Now, Unlu, the reason I mention Unlu is because Unlu started 3 years ago in Expert Dojo. They were building the masterclass of India at the time. I liked it, even though I was afraid. I was afraid because the masterclass of India, masterclass over here is not a great model. It's too expensive to find users. And the production is too expensive. So it works, but it doesn't work, right? But I felt, hey, we'll try in India. Maybe we can get a lower cost of acquisition, and the production definitely will be less. And they went up to $200,000 a month very quickly. But it was hard to go past that because they had the problem with the acquisition. But like any great entrepreneur who's going through the domain awareness, domain authority to domain dominance, he realized as he was watching his customer what they really wanted. You can't do Horizon 3 without going through the pain of lovable product, right? And so he realized what they wanted. And they're like, hey, you know what we want to do? We want to learn. We don't want to watch a class. We want to learn how to be a great script writer. We want to learn how to write a movie. And if we write a great movie, we want to keep some of the IP. If we write a song that a musician plays, we want to be able to keep some of the IP. So now they're doing $1 million a month in revenue. They've changed the name to Mugafi. They will probably do $3 to $5 million a month within the next year and a half. And my guess is they will be the largest holder of IP in the entire country. The largest holder of IP in the entire country within the next 2 to 3 years. Another great company, we have a ownership position in Beehive, the co-working space, who are the financing vehicle for Beehive, which Shesh is just an amazing entrepreneur, which we have over there as well. We've got a ton more from India. We've got Zeev, who I think will be who are in Singapore, who I think will be one of the hottest token raises of the year, and are building a thing called automated decentralized rollups as a service, which is an absolutely necessary technology that was not even available to build 3-4 years ago, but today they're going to be the trailblazer on it. It's like building Shopify or Wix or Square for the internet 20 years ago, right? We have Credit. Again, another blockchain application who can send money from diaspora to Africa within 3 seconds for $1. If they're going to send $100, they can know. Why is this important? This is important because you can build amazing emotional resonance around this. And as we were going through their brand and their plan and everything they were doing, we're like, okay, so just understand this. A certain competitor who will remain nameless, but begins with W and has got U at the beginning of their following name, those people charge $5, $10, $15, $20 to send $100, $200 to Africa, right? The FX, I won't go into the numbers, but it's not pretty either, which means people, not myself, because we're on a podcast, but like people could be forgiven for saying that WU have been stealing from the African people for a long time, right? Not just the African people, but in this case, it's the African people, right? So if they've been stealing from them for so long, then what have we got to do as Credit, who can send it for $1 and with hardly any cost on the FX? Well, we can recover about $1 billion of stolen money directly to the African people through the first ever world's fair transfer money system. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where that emotional resonance is strong. Anyway, I can give you 30 more companies, but they're all following the same way. Very fast growth companies, breaking through, focused on growth and raising money because this entire market is growth based.
Right. It's amazing. So among these great products and great entities, of course, the founders, of course, they have to have a little bit of luck, a little bit of being in the right place at the right time, have the knowledge, knowing how to grow the company. So all these features. So for you, for Expert Dojo, when a growth hacker comes to you, like how do you differentiate between, okay, this is an entity for Expert Dojo versus it's not? Like what's your
for a new company?
How do you choose that?
So I had a company this morning, and they had 3 German engineers, which honestly, like if there's something that trumps India, it's German engineers. Like German engineers, they just never are wrong, right? It's like watching clockwork. And so they gave me in there, like, hey, let us show you our website. We provide systems management for large organizations, right? We provide visibility where there is no visibility. I'm like, okay, well, explain to me what that means. And their website was just feature, loads of features just everywhere, right? It would just hurt your head. There's so many features. And I said, well, help me understand that. They said, well, when we're actually doing controls of systems within organizations, the average for for a technology that's able to provide those system checks and make sure that things are to the right level, the bar is 80%. We can do 99%. I said, how sure are you of 99%? He said, 100% sure. He said, we will make sure that to a 99% percentage, we would be able to tell how perfect something is or how they're not for entire systems control. This is huge, like in factories, organizations everywhere. So I said, I don't understand that. Like, why does your website have all this garbage on it? Why doesn't it just say, we provide systems credit and systems credit. We provide systems checks that are 99% accurate. 80% we are the only company in the world who can do this. The average bar is 80%. This is not good enough for us. Test us now. right? Why not say that?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see a company like that, I'm like, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no proof from their existing customers. There's no testimonials. There's no consumer generated content.
Mm-hmm.
All of the emotional resonance is missing. We're
Mm-hmm.
good at that. We know their score is low there. Amazing.
Right.
Their score for their product is really high because the customers who are with them, they're staying and they're buying more and more and more. So we know they work, right? We also know that the people are really strong within the product. So we know there's no way German engineers of this quality, because they have an amazing advisor team, are going to be wrong on what we're doing. So top score on the systems and the product. Shitty score on the business, the emotional resonance that they have. Outreach, hardly any outreach that they're doing whatsoever. And their domain dominance all the way down below domain awareness. So I've got a low score on domain awareness, a low score on outbound, a low score on emotional resonance, a sky high score on product, and a sky high score on investment. That's my type of baby.
Right. Okay. So you are saying you're not necessarily looking at unit economics or like gross margins or like what kind of a EBITDA they're going to make. Not at this stage. You are more about like how can you achieve the domain dominance. That's your major.
Do they have the potential to go from a lovable product to a Horizon 3 product by building something the market needs?
Right.
I think of it as mind the gap for the tube in England, right? The gap is an incredibly old, traditional, conservative industry where nobody really has changed anything in a long time. And a time where technologies are breaking through that can have huge change in that industry. For me, that's the perfect gap. And so this particular company had the perfect gap. The fact that everything else was aligned with areas that we can really help them with, aligned with areas that I need for them to nail, for the other things to work, is a dream.
Right. Nice. So let's touch base on the back end of any of these entities. So that's where we come in actually. So while these growth hackers, the product managers and the CEOs are busy doing what they're good at, right? So they're really good at making that product, going in that journey to the domain dominance. You still need to abide by all the regular requirements, the accounting, the reporting, the funding, or having those financial reports ready for your lenders, the next level of investors. So all this comes down to having that finance and accounting backend clean for you. So what's your take on that? How important it is? How have you seen it? And of course, one interesting fact is that we, CFO Plans, is actually Expert Dojo's very own accounting services company. So what's your take on this?
So I'll go one step further. So when I talk about lovable product and I talk about like how good is that product, systems are included inside that. And when we did our own audit on Expert Dojo last year, we said emotional resonance, we're a 9 out of 10. Most people who are engaged with Expert Dojo, they recognize how hard we try, and our brand is extremely good. Outbound, not so good. We're like a 4 out of 10. If we're then looking at like investment, we're fine. We got plenty of investment and we're really good on all levels. We're like a 9 out of 10 on investment. Dominance, really good. Like we're everywhere. If there's like a epic production that can be done, we're doing the epic production to build it up. Product, because of our systems, 3 out of 10. If our systems were good, our product would have been 8 out of 10. So here's the thing. Great companies with really good products, solving huge problems, building huge domain dominance with amazing communication with their customers, fail every single day of the week because the product and the systems that are around the product and the outbound outreach are not working well enough. In our case, our systems were really bad. They were terrible. Like, you won't say it, but our accounting was a mess. and so it's bizarre. It's kind of bizarre because like all I talk about here are accounting principles. Right. I talk about using maths to predict a probability of companies becoming unicorns. I talk about 200% growth for where they're going to go to. I talk about math, but our accounting sucked. Yeah. And it sucked because I don't know. Right. I'm not good at accounting. Like I'm good at this. And my other people, they're too busy. We got too few people doing it. Right. And so we had messed around for years and years, hiring people, bringing people in, getting them to do stuff, just stupid stuff. And then we brought you in, and you have absolutely changed our lives. Actually, it was even funny because we wanted you to do 2023. And you said, look, we're so embarrassed for 2020. We wanted you, 2020. You're like, we're so embarrassed for 2022 that we have to fix it. It's just, it's too much. Like, it hurts my eyes to look at it. And so
that's when we say that we have seen this like a million times. Don't worry about it. So we
have
seen this mess like a million times before.
It's huge. So I'll make three reasons why this is important. Number one, we just want to sleep at night. I'm an entrepreneur. You may call me an investor. Investors are entrepreneurs too. We have a different master than another startup, but we're entrepreneurs, right? I want to sleep well at night. If I'm going to sleep well at night, I should have done this 2 years ago. My bad. But the next best time to plant a tree, it's today. Mm-hmm. And like for the prices that you've done it, you do exactly the same as us. You get the best resources at the optimal prices with the smartest people who really care about the business. Like I said, I just didn't know. Right. But now that I know, I would have done it 4 years ago, but I am doing it today. And I suggest every single person should make sure that they have someone like CFO plans in place, because it will change your absolute business. I promise you. The second reason is that you have to be able to project properly. Right. Now, I'm kind of okay at projecting properly, but most founders are awful at it. They make up numbers. I actually have this friend, Jeffrey Delasio, who's an investor. He's invested in 140 companies. And Jeffrey will say, I've never, ever met a founder, ever, including all of the ones I've invested in, who has not lied to me in their projections. Right. Every projection, funny, there's no projection that goes down like that. Every projection goes up like that. Nice big hockey stick. Right. Use professionals to help you with your assumptions and your projections and everything that goes into it. And just number three, from the perspective of just having respect for the people who invest in your company. If you're a venture backable company, you want to be able to show that you're taking them seriously. Right. Like just even forget about good, whatever they are, just they're investing in our company. Right. We need to respect them. Right. So it's really important.
When I asked this question, like first time I heard that actually, like that respect for people, the stakeholders of the company, right? So that respect means you show them that you are taking them seriously by providing those numbers, the results, the reports, the accounting piece, squeaky clean, in compliance with the regulatory requirements. So that needs an actual professional. So thank you very much for the validation. And we always say that we are not salespeople. And I mentioned this to somebody some time ago. I said hey, I'm not really good at sales, and he said, no, you're very good at sales because you have a really good product. When you do that service right, that is your sales, right? So sales is not just talk. So if you carry out your service right, meaning that's our product, then you're good. So again, thank you. Last question, Expert Dojo, interesting name. Any connection to martial arts as a kid, as an adult? What happened?
No. So I stole the name. Can I say that? I stole the name. No, my kid came home from school, and this was years ago. We used to be Pay It Forward Labs. Right. And Pay It Forward Labs, the genesis of Expert Dojo was I would arrange these huge events, bring in a lot of investors, have investors meet founders, because I felt like that access would give founders a better chance of being able to break through. And Pay It Forward Labs, and I have loads of really wonderful stories here locally in Santa Monica about it. And then I had this chap, it was Nectar, and he had a development firm, and he said to me, Brian, what you're doing is too good not to have as a technology. So I want to build a technology, but you can't use Pay It Forward Labs. You have to use a different name. Right. And my kid came home from school, and I'm like, Liam, what are you doing? And he said, I'm on Class Dojo. And I'm like, oh, I like that. And then I started looking in, and I thought to myself, what's the problem? In LA especially, everybody's an expert. Like, people go to a 2-week UCLA program, and suddenly they're a psychologist, right? With their 2 weeks of experience. Everybody's an expert, straight away. You go to a night class, you're an expert in meditation, right? And so, and I think it's a little bit unfair for startups that they meet all these experts who are not real experts, including me at that particular time. And so I thought, let's create the right perspective. And I love it. As I looked more and more into Japanese culture, I love their humility and how they look at stuff. Things like ikigai or wabi-sabi. Like there's a bunch of really beautiful terminologies around business that allow you to see them very differently. And so with the dojo, it's a place of continual learning. With an expert, when he or she comes to a dojo, nobody ever says, I am the greatest martial arts person. They're just always improving. Like it's always a strive to improve. So whether it's a founder, it's an investor, it's an expert in that particular space, this is a place of humility, it's a place of excellence, and it's a place of always striving to be better and better. And I just liked how the name encapsulated
it. It's a learning community. So basically the continuous learning. And that's what get your products to dominance, as you put it. Right. So great. That's a fantastic conversation, Brian. Thank you very much. And guys, so we'll see you again with another episode of CFO Plans Fireside Chat with another great resource person like Brian. Until then, bye bye. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.